A big hello to you, Jose. This is Dr. Jose Bowen. To everybody watching, it's a big honor to have you on the show on the YouTube channel. I've been following your work for quite a while. We've had the chance to sort of be on a couple of things together, especially with Brian Alexander. So this is a great opportunity for me to be able to actually talk to you. So thank you very much for allowing me to actually interview you.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Great. And so one of the big things is I know a lot about you, but I want to make sure that my viewers know a lot about you. And you bring a lot of wisdom to this field because of your background in higher education, your background in artificial intelligence, as well as your background dealing with business. So can you please share a bit about your experience with all of that?
Well, all right. I mean, I don't really have any background in artificial intelligence. I learned like the rest of us. But I had so I was a chemist. I was a musician, a humanist. I taught music for a number of years as a professor. I was an administrator for 20 years. As a dean twice. I was a college president. But mostly I've written about pedagogy. So there are a bunch of books on that. And so one of those was about the internet and about technology. But I'm not, I took the one computer science course. My publisher said, "Hey, you should write a book about AI." And it's like, oh, okay, I got to look more closely at that. So I really come at AI as a humanist, as a pet, thinking about it as a teacher, but also as a thinker. Yeah, I do org psych work and DEI work, if I can still say that, for Fortune 500 companies, or at least I was doing more of that, and now it's all AI work, which is good that that replaced it. So I have some experience with mostly very large corporations and what's happening in the workforce, and I thought that would be my retirement gig. With a couple of pedagogy things for higher ed, and then the AI thing happened, and so that's been keeping me pretty busy. And so I do try to stay on top of that, yeah, which is hard.
Right, right. And yeah, and it's like it doesn't stop, right? It keeps enhancing and changing and evolving. So yeah, there's a lot to this. Okay, so I want to start off with my very first question. I got several different questions because I'm excited to get your feedback on a lot of this. My very first thing deals with AI literacy. So that is my mission, right? My mission is to try and get the whole world to understand that everybody, to include the young, to include the old, and especially students, they all need to develop this AI literacy. And when I say AI literacy, I'm talking about as far as defining it as something that deals with an awareness of AI literacy, capability dealing with AI literacy, meaning understanding the AI's capability as well as our own capability, prompt engineering, as well as knowledge, meaning that I know that AI can be used in good and bad ways, all sorts of terminology, and then, of course, critical thinking. And that encompasses aspects such as bias, such as ethics, things like over reliance. So these are all the important ways that I define it. Can you tell me, how do you define AI literacy and why do you feel that it's important?
Yeah, so I think we're in this funny phase where we've all started to recognize there is this AI literacy thing. We've got these long lists, and the problem with long lists is that, it's hard to remember them. So I break it down into two big categories. I think AI literacy is about asking better questions and about evaluating answers. There's more to it than that. But that's, of course, critical thinking, right? So, I do demos and workshops where I have people, ask a question, see what AI can do. And then I say, so now make it better. And that's two parts. One is you have to know, well, it wasn't good enough. How you have to be able to evaluate the answer. And then, yeah, there's some prompting tricks, but mostly it's about thinking more carefully. Oh, I forgot to add this. Oh, I should specify that. I should tell it to be an expert. I should say, and so, but I do think the reason I do that is because asking better questions and evaluating answers is very familiar. It's what we all do, right? We all teach AI literacy already, even if we don't know it. And so the just like when we say we teach critical thinking, it's you can teach critical thinking better just by using the words critical thinking, saying that thing we just did, that was critical thinking. And so that actually we have experimental evidence that improves students' critical thinking and their awareness. Oh, those tools kind of fit together. Um, so I've been thinking a lot about the how to break down the ask better questions, evaluate answers. Eddie Watson, my co-author, and I are thinking about this as a kind of like a tennis match, right? Because there's some things you do before you ask the question, and there's some things you do after. So as you said, right, one is means task appropriateness, right? The T is AI. Is it going to replace my thinking? Is it going to enhance it? What are my goals? I call this the push-up test, right? Is this going to make me stronger or just save effort, right? That's especially important for students. Um, Setup, specificity, context, right? What do I actually need to tell it to do? And like how can I improve this prompt? So, and there are some of those questions, should I, is this a good usage of AI? Is this really going to help? So anyway, there's a whole set of questions there before you ask the question, and then they're after evaluating answers. Are there errors? Is there bias? Did it hallucinate? It's always overconfident. You have to be aware of that. And then examine the evidence. Where did it come from? Mike Caulfield has this great, source tracers. If this is not the source of the evidence, go backwards, find the source, and keep going back until you find the source, and then tell me what the source is, and then how much confidence you have in the source. Uh, that, of course, is a better prompt. I've now got people say, "Oh, you get wrong answers." I say, "Well, then ask it to double check, ask it to triple check, right? Ask it to quadruple check. It doesn't get pissed off by that like a human would."
Right.
Um, so I think it's, we haven't yet come up with like, well, here are the three things. Here, we have pyramids and overlapping circles and tennis nets. And so I think it'll take us a while, and maybe we won't get to one definition, just like we don't have one definition of critical thinking.
Right.
But I think we're all asking the right question. So it clearly involves better use of AI, but it also has to involve, when to use it, an understanding of what it is. My latest sort of, hobby horse is, if you've only tried a foundation model like ChatGPT or Gemini, and then you have no idea what AI can do. You say, "Oh, I tried ChatGPT and it probably tried a free model." But even if you tried the best pay model of the best foundation model, and you did it recently, you still have no idea what AI can do because so many of the evolving capabilities involve RAG, involve connecting it to other sources, involve very, very long prompts, involve expertise. And so, that we're seeing with medical diagnosis, right?
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, I asked ChatGPT to get, well, yeah, okay, that's the wrong way to do it. If you train it on, millions of patients, and then you give it access to live, real-time PubMed, other, diagnostic tools, then AI is better than doctors. But ChatGPT is not. And so, that's a capability gap that I think has grown quite a lot in the last, 8 months, because AI, now that it can search, that changes everything.
Yeah.
Uh, so I often talk about, I have people search for ideas, right? Contextual search, right? I can't search a regular document for, has anything like this ever happened before? Has anyone ever done research like this? Did anything similar ever happen to a patient? Is there any other deposition that we took that has any similarities, right? I can't do that with regular search tools. And so that's, anybody who doesn't recognize that's incredibly powerful to be able to search all of world knowledge for a similar idea or a similar, that's going to make, or, a similar student problem. That's a great tool and we should use it.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you hit a bunch of great points there. I like the simplicity aspect. One of the things that I try to do is to try and tell people, imagine that you're at some sort of networking get together, and you see this really smart person that, hey, you would love to talk to them. So you go over and you ask them a question, just like you would with, let's say, an AI like ChatGPT. Well, the way that you ask the question is going to determine the answer and the level of the answer that you get. So you have to think, okay, what background does this person need from me in order to better understand the question that I'm asking? What are the reasons that I'm asking? All these different things. So I think that's a really powerful one. And then this last thing that you talked about, as far as searching and asking a question, sometimes I'll use an AI and be like, I'm not really sure how to pose this question. And so I ask it that to like help me refine this question. I'm trying to figure this out, and it helps a lot. So and I think the fact that it helps in that way is one of the things that makes it a little bit more complicated because people want to have like, okay, this is exactly how you can use it. But of course, the beauty of AI is that you can use it in so many different ways that the only thing that really limits you is the creativity that you bring to it as far as how you plan to use it, how you plan to incorporate it. So yeah, you hit a lot of major points there that I think are really important for people to better understand the power that we have with AI.
Yeah, we've never had a technology this weird.
Yeah,
We've never had a technology that performed better sometimes if you offered it chocolate. I mean, that is truly bizarre.
yeah,
Doesn't always work,
yeah.
but that just it's not like any other technology we've ever experienced. And
It's
really,
so
I
true.
challenge anybody to tell me, is there any other technology ever invented by humans that responds better sometimes to if suppose I give you chocolate, yeah, or Britney Spears tickets or something, whatever. I mean, it's just right. It's
Right.
weird technology.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is weird because sometimes the more that you personify it, the better it tends to interact, which again is very illogical on some levels, but it makes sense in the way that it was designed. So yeah, there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that. Another question that I had for you, and this is something that I think is something that initially really drew me to you because I heard you talk about this one point and I thought, wow, finally I'm hearing someone else say something that I think is extremely important for what's going on in higher education. And this is this aspect of the vital importance of experiential learning. So by this, I mean that I think that we've been in the information age for a couple of decades now, right? Meaning that, hey, any information that you want, you can get it. You can either go to the library, go to the internet, encyclopedias, you have it. YouTube has a video about just about everything. So it's not about information. So if I go to the university and all they're doing is giving me information, I don't really need to go to the university. But the real value that I see, and I've heard you talk about this, is experiential learning, meaning that we're going to the university and they're focusing on that. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that and what that would look like for a university to actually implement?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I wrote this book, Teaching Naked, when the internet happened about this idea, and I said, so we went from a world where knowledge was scarce, but mostly reliable, to a
Right.
world where knowledge is abundant, but mostly unreliable. And so, if we were in the business of giving out reliable information, well, okay, our competition is now there's plenty of information out there. It's just mostly wrong. And so the knowing what information is relevant, is correct, is useful,
Mm.
critical thinking. So I think that the liberal arts and critical thinking became more important with the internet, and I think that's happening again. And so the access to information, the multiple choice questions about who was in this band, when did this happen, the names and dates stuff, that's just easy to look up now. And so
Right.
the analysis, putting together the pieces. So all of that aligns perfectly with the experiential and with internships and with also with AI simulations. So I think the thing we're going to see, and AI simulations are customizable, so I can get right just like a video game, right? So for years and years and years, decades, I think I've been talking about how video games are designed to keep you playing, right? Their primary goal is to keep you engaged, to keep you
Right.
wanting to. So if they're too easy, they get a little harder, right? Because humans don't like things that are too easy. We quit. We don't like things that are too hard. We quit. So video gamers call this pleasantly frustrating, right? Because if it's pleasantly frustrating, I get to the next level. And so, right, it's divided, right? Games are scaffolded, right? I get to the next level and then it gets a little bit harder and then I get mastery and then I get right. So the scaffolding really matters. But also the sense of agency, right? They deal with all of the intrinsic
Mm.
motivation pieces, right? What I summarize, this last book, I summarize this, you know, I care, I can, I matter. When students
Mm.
feel I care, I can, I matter, they want to do the work, right? You don't need to motivate them. They're intrinsically motivated. And so, if I give you a situation that you care about, I give it to you at the level that you're able to do, right? If the homework's too hard or too easy, you also quit, even though you care. And then
Mm.
your doing it has to matter. I have to be the one to do this, not somebody else. I can do this. And so that's long been the secret of great teaching. right, is turning on a student's internal motivation, helping them connect
Right.
that they care, they are able, they have the ability, and they have the agency to do this. And so a great way to do that is with simulations. And so AI makes this really easy to do. And so I think we're going to see, uh, I have a game on my website. You're Thomas Cromwell. Try not to get executed. Way more interesting than listening to be drone on about Henry VIII or something. So, but I also think we're going to see it for exams, right? Instead of taking the midterm, talk to Einstein, the bot, and he will give you the thermodynamics, and he will test your knowledge. And if it's harder for you, he'll make it easier, and if it's easier for you, he makes it harder, and he'll give you explanations. And so it becomes a learning tool, not just to
Mm.
have you. But if you can't meet the standard, then Einstein says no. And so, uh, but that's also a way to stop cheating in a lot of ways, right? Because it's engaging, but also it's like, do I have to talk another bot, and how do I? But having students be in simulations, having experienced things, I do worry about the isolating feature of that because, right, everybody in their own simulation is isolating. And so I want students to be together with others. But I think there is tremendous promise for individualized simulations that are at the right level for every student, that are engaging, that allow you to do things. And so I don't think that the problems of AI as an answer machine are going to be with us as the way we think they are. Because if I turn that around, then I use AI to create situations where students have to deal with real world problems,
Mm.
um, and they fail at the game. They can then come back and say, "Okay, I didn't do very well, and how do I fix this?" One of the games on my website is a presidential simulation where I ask you be the president. You're so smart. You fix the economy. You get 4 years to do it, and it gives you feedback every time you do something. Well, it's now 3 months later. Here's what's happened. Here's the GDP, right, et cetera. And
Yes.
so, it's a macroeconomics game. But if a student does poorly, they now want to come and say, well, how do I do better? Right. I mean,
Right.
and so, uh, I think it's going to be a piece of our future education to have these simulations.
Mm.
Um, so there's still lots of things to work out, but I totally agree with you that, and one other thing about the corporations, right, is that as we see the internship apocalypse, right, as we see lower level jobs are the ones that go away, right? The C students are no longer going to get jobs, right? The students who can only do AI level work, right? I'm only as good as AI. Well, then you're out of a job, right?
Right.
Because those jobs are being replaced with AI. So you have to be better than AI to get a job now, and that's the new reality, which means we have to raise standards. So I also think that faculty need to now be raising standards. I'll let you use AI, but you now have to do better work. And so,
Mm.
but I think that corporations are going to ask us to give them more experience with real world problems before they hire them, because that training, that having them do that sort of work to get them right, we could do that with simulations, and I think that's what's going to be demanded of us.
Yeah, so I mean that's exactly right. And I mean, so like I teach professional communications. That's one of the main courses that I teach. And in there, I'm already using simulations. I mean, I do a lot of role playing. We do nonstop role playing in my class, but then I'll also incorporate simulations where they do some of that on their own. They come back, and now we can do things at a different level because they've gone through the simulation. And I think that is something that can be done in many different ways in many different situations so that it is an empowering tool that a student could use on their own, and that could be a formative thing, it could be a summative thing like you were describing. There's many different ways of implementation that I think makes that a really powerful thing. So in talking about corporations, since you just brought that up, that kind of ties in with my next question here as far as what has been your experience working with businesses and different groups as far as what are you seeing now? Meaning, are they expecting a certain level of AI literacy already with students coming in trying to get jobs? What are they wanting from students that are graduating now? What is the big thing that businesses are looking for?
Well, so it's all over the map, right? There's no one. There's
Mhm.
there's many businesses as there are universities. So I mean more. So uh, so there are definitely some. Spotify famously, Netflix are saying, the baseline is now AI usage, Everybody should use AI for every task. In the same way that I would say use a spell checker, right?
Mm.
That's
Wow, that
that's
comp.
baseline,
Okay.
right? That in other words, and, and we have to recognize as an educator, there's a different, right? Spell checker made my spelling better. It doesn't make me a better speller. So if I want to learn to spell, I shouldn't use the spell
Wow.
checker. But if I'm in business, that's absolutely the baseline. I often say what we call cheating, business calls progress, right? The baseline is no more spelling mistakes. Use a spell checker. Right? I'm not
Right.
going to tell you to go back and take a course. I'm just telling you to turn on the spell checker. So a lot of companies are saying if AI can do it, let's get rid of those people and have AI do those jobs. But I also want humans. So human skills, right? The critical thinking skills, right? Good use of AI, but good use. And how do I add something? People who are really good at data, really asking good questions. Companies are all over the map, obviously. So, some companies are trying to lock it down. But I think we've largely moved on from the place where we were a year ago, which is 85% of people are using AI daily at work, just not telling their boss because they
Hmm.
didn't want to lose their job. Think, oh, well, he'll think I couldn't do, and I've
Right.
encouraged people. I said, you've got to bring it out in the open. I said, because there is efficiency here. There are new things you can do. But if people are just doing it in secret, that's not good for them or for you.
Mm.
And so because you don't know what the kinds of tools. So lots of my big clients now have their own financial version, right? Again, it's not, you don't want people using Chat GPT. You want people using an AI that you have created with all of your customer data that's in a
Mm.
secure environment that
Right.
you've also started to fine tune and customize with your best practices, your marketing, your whatever. So there are lots of opportunities, right? Marketing is a place where, right, no one is going out and saying, "Oh my God, we've got to test the pricing plane with let's send out 100 teams to go to deal with different age groups and different ethnic groups. Let's just, now do it by the end of the day, right? And
Yeah.
so you can get much faster turnaround. Should we charge 4.99 for 14 ounces of this? Well, now you can ask a soccer mom who's 35 years old in Wisconsin. Now you can ask a
Right.
whole group of them. And so marketing, communications, right? Getting feedback. What would my political enemies think of this, right? What are people on the extremes going to think of this? You can get so I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a lot of it in HR to check bias, right? So
Okay.
look at all the performance reviews and tell me if what is the language for men and the language for women different? Using
Wow.
it in right review what people said about our employees.
Hmm.
Another one is right for bias, and this is where I encourage universities to think about this. It's like, okay, you don't want the AI to do the hiring, but because AI does have bias because it learned from us, but like human bias, once you recognize it, you can try to fix it. But human bias is hard to fix. But an AI can do that. I just say focus on teaching and research and rank the candidates only by these criteria.
Right.
And so I could have a committee do the work and then have AI do the work and then say, okay, so you three men brought me three male candidates. The AI came up with these two women. Why did what's wrong with them, right? You can have a conversation, right? The
Yeah.
human still needs to be there, but the AI it can do other things at scale. Are there any other candidates anywhere in the world like this that we might want, again, that contextual search that we might want to look at, or somebody we should go poach? And so, but and also I find so there are two things. One is efficiency.
Hmm.
So low level jobs are going away because AI can do those, the junior jobs. But the other thing I encourage people to do is what are the things that you could now do that you couldn't do before? Right? My favorite example in Dallas, we have these new AI traffic signals, right? Nobody knew you needed AI traffic lights, but of course, an AI traffic light won't let you sit there, right, when the light is red
Oh,
and there's
right.
nobody else coming. But it
Right.
also if there's an ambulance coming, the AI traffic light shuts off all the other lights and lets the ambulance go through. It
Nice.
also knows if somebody is speeding on a yellow light and it doesn't. Oh, now it holds you because if I give you the green light, just automatically you're going to get killed. And in
Right.
fact, they're saving lives. So that's an
Interesting.
example of a product we didn't know we needed, right? It's a new thing we couldn't do before, and
Right.
now we can do it. And so I think that's a question we should often be asking ourselves as faculty and as institutions. What could we now do that we couldn't do before that's customized and interesting? So for example, I customize all of my assignments for students to
Hmm.
their interests so they're more motivating, right? So you want to
Mm.
be a dentist? But Joe wants to be a chef, and so you get dental examples because that's more motivating. Because then now you say,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is going to help me be a dentist." But Joe gets cooking examples because he doesn't want to be a dentist, and so, uh, and I couldn't do that before. I mean,
Hmm.
I could do like three versions of the problem set, but now I can do everything can be customized for every student without
Right.
really any extra work, and so. That's an example of how I could improve education without having to do extra work. And so I think companies are just starting to realize that they have to do both. They can't just cut jobs and look for efficiencies, although there are plenty of those. They have to also look at how do I rethink the workflow.
Mm. So, this kind of ties back with some other stuff that I've been reading, and it goes directly to your experience as far as you have this broad experience in that, you did these different types of jobs in these different fields, and it seems like more and more that's what business is looking for in their candidates, that they have these different experiences, different capabilities, so that when they are using the AI, they can use it in many different ways because they have this different understanding of different aspects of the job itself. So how does that tie in with what us as educators should be doing when we're focusing on our instruction, right? I know there's the whole aspect of, well, you can't just be having them learn dates and figures because that is something that the AI can easily respond to. But so what should be some of the things that we start to focus on more? Of course, critical thinking, but is there more to that these companies are wanting?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll admit I'm an odd duck. I mean, I am a generalist. I do different things. So, but there are some lessons there. So I
Hmm.
do teach creativity, right? So creative people do need to be experts. Creative people tend to be experts in more than one thing, though, so they can make connections. But you have to know, you have to be curious. You have to
Hmm.
know things in different areas. So critical thinking and agility is going to be key. But you also have to be an expert because you can't judge answers if you don't know how to think. Well, I
Right.
know that's wrong.
You have
Um,
to know what right looks like. Yes,
you have to know
exactly.
what it looks like. But being an expert it's going to be harder to get people to expertise because AI can do these intermediate steps. Again,
Mhm.
the calculator is not a perfect example, but it's a very good example of one thing, which is that the calculator did not eliminate the need to learn math, right?
Right.
On the other hand, you can't be a great accountant without also using a spreadsheet or a calculator, right? That you need to have number sense, you need to do math and addition and subtraction. But the calculator changed a couple of things. One is it made us ask the question, well, when do I introduce it? The question is not do I allow my accountants to ever use a calculator? That is not the question. The question is when is it appropriate to say now you can use a calculator for this task? Maybe not when we're still learning addition and subtraction, right? The pedagogical question is when. The next question is what? Are there things that I no longer have to teach? And the truth is, we no longer teach as much long division as we used to, because
Right.
you used to need long division because there wasn't a way to do that. So I spent, years doing those things, and now it's like, yeah, okay. And the third is motivation, right? They used to tell you have to learn the long division or the patient will die. That as a doctor, you will step out into the hallway, get a piece of paper and a pencil, and you will do long division to figure out what the dosage is for this patient of this right size and height, et
Right.
cetera. Nobody does that anymore. In no place in the world does anybody step out into the hallway with a piece of paper and do long division. Everybody has an app for that.
Right.
Um, so the motivation is, well, you need to have number sense so that you don't put an extra zero on your taxes. Right?
Mm.
That's a different way of framing. Well, you need to have a sense of, no, that doesn't, I think I must have entered that wrong into my calculator. There's an extra, that can't be right. Right? You
Yeah.
still have to have that. And you have to be able to you have to have a sense of how numbers work. Um, so it does change math education, but it doesn't mean, well, we're going to ban calculators forever.
Right.
So I think that being, an expert in a variety of things is good, although I'm not as much of an expert, I'm not as good at any one of those things as I could have been if I did nothing else. Um, so I think students are going to need to still be experts. We have to think of when to introduce AI. We still have to get them to expertise, and that's a huge new pedagogical challenge. Uh,
Hmm.
but I think we also have to think about, how do I enhance creativity, agility, so the asking better questions part is partly critical thinking, but I'm pretty good at prompting, not because I'm an engineer or a computer scientist, right? So
Right.
my favorite prompt for people is I say, so if you had an idea that you wanted to turn into a proposal, and your provost has a pot of money for summer research grants, could your AI do your proposal? Yes, of course. But if you say, turn this idea into a proposal using my provost's forms, be an expert, etc., it'll be good. But my prompt is transform this idea into a proposal my provost will love. And those extra two words will love do a lot of work in that sense, right? So that's
Right.
that's linguistically creative. Since we're programming in language, people who are good with language English majors, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, right? Being good with language and thinking, what does this really mean becomes a tremendous AI skill and advantage. And so I do think that we're going to see a return to a broader liberal arts curriculum that allows people to understand references, to think differently, and to be creative because they can connect ideas and ask for unusual things.
That's gold right there. Is that in your latest book, that content right there? Because that's
Yeah, there is there that's in the book, and as I think about a revision, what happens is you write a book, and I'm fairly pithy, but as I do 100 presentations, it's like I crystallize that idea, this is and so I'm constantly revising how I
that's in the new
say
book,
things.
right?
Yeah, the
That's
new
that's
AI
not
book has
teaching
all of
making.
this.
That's in
Yeah. It is. Yeah.
yeah.
No, and no,
Okay.
although there's a lot about teaching change. The book in between the book before the AI book has a lot of this idea of the I care, I can, I matter. How do I get
Mm.
students to really dig in? And I think that's never been more relevant. Um,
Yeah.
so that book doesn't have anything about AI in it because that wasn't on our minds. But
Right.
I do think that for faculty, on the one hand, yes, you can't ignore AI; it's there. But in terms of teaching, good pedagogy is always going to matter, and good pedagogy has always been about helping students find why they need to do this work.
Mm. Mm. That's powerful. So this ties in with my next question, which is perfect. Perfect little transition here, right? Going into the AI as far as it being integrated with everything, more and more faculty, teachers, professors are thinking, hey, is AI taking over all of teaching, right? Is there still aspects of teaching that is something specific to humans? And what is that they should continue to fully develop, or is AI simply going to take over all aspects of teaching? What are your thoughts
So,
on that?
so I don't think AI is going to take over all teaching. On the other hand, I would say that because that's what I want to hear, right? So I think we all have to be careful to avoid the wishful thinking trap, which is
Right.
the I'm so valuable, AI could never do my job. The truth is, everybody it wants to think that, and so, uh, I do think it's possible that there are going to be things that AI can do. I have this conversation with doctors. I'm on a medical school thing this summer, and so oh, AI will never be able to do, the human part. It's like, well, actually, no. Patients prefer AI because it's more
Yeah.
empathetic than you, the surgeon. And we've got lots of data on this now. And so
Right.
if I don't know it's an AI, so at the moment, if I know it's an AI, I'm not so happy. But will we get around that in the same way that my driving ed teacher used to say that automatic transmission was a sin? And you will never let a machine make those decisions. So now we all think, no, 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 automatic transmission's okay. So human attitudes can change. And so I don't know. But I do think that relationships are going to continue to be the first thing that matters. It's not your content, right? Faculty in general, because we're rational people, we like school. And so we forget that the way the human brain works is that you're not convinced by facts. we're not as rational as we think. It's like, oh, here's a bunch of facts. This will change your mind.
Right.
Yeah, see how well that's working in the world, right? Here is why climate change is true. Let me just bury you with facts. That's just not that doesn't work. Because what people do is they first decide, are you one of my people? If you're right, identity precedes rationality. If you're one of my people, then I believe your facts. If I don't think you have my best interest, you're not one of my people, you don't really care about me, then your facts are fake news, right? That
Mm.
everything you say is just you're just lying to me because that's what you people do. And so the tribalism actually precedes that. So people often say, oh, um, I'll uh, I'll uh, I'll believe it when I see it. And the truth is actually, that what we really do is no, I will see it when I believe it. And so you have to first believe that you are trying to help me. So if I don't believe and trust you, then it doesn't matter about your facts. So
Mm.
if I believe you and trust me and trust you and think, oh, you have my best interest, you care, right? There's a great paper about student learning that says, if you don't care, I don't care, is the name of the paper, which is a great title. Uh, and it's true though.
Yeah.
So getting students to believe that you care is the primary, and I mean that in both senses of the word, um, uh, call of teaching, right?
Mm.
If I can't convince students that I care, it doesn't matter how many they'll regurgitate on tests. They'll give me what they'll tell me what I want to hear, but they're not actually changing their mind, which is again the last book was about teaching change. If I want you to change your mind, I've got to start with relationships. I've got to convince you that what I really care about is not changing your mind. It's about you as a human being. And
Mm.
most students don't have that experience, right? Gallup says that 24% of students after 4 years can say, I had one teacher who cared about me as a human being. And
Well,
that's an American tragedy. And so, but that also means that that's why higher ed is largely doesn't work. Because if we want to change minds, right, people will learn what they have to for a job. But if I want to actually get you to be a broader thinker, then I have to find a way to become your friend. And that feels weird to a lot of faculty. So I think that sense of I think this module would be really good for you, even if it's an AI module, right? Now I could be totally wrong, and it turns out that we end up trusting AI more than humans. That would be a tragedy, but right, humans are weird, and so that could happen. Uh, but I
see, no, go
go ahead.
ahead, please.
No, you go ahead.
Well, so I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. And to me, the key is what you've been hitting at is this emotional connection, right? And it's very difficult for me to make an emotional connection with the content if I'm not making a good emotional connection with the instructor, right? Because the instructor is the one that orchestrates everything, that gives me better understanding of what it is that I'm even doing. So I think that's a really powerful point of that. And that is what really enhances things beyond just data and information. Again, data and information I could get from YouTube, but the fact that we're doing something in class and it's, oh, this is exciting, this is motivational, now I care, and now I can better remember the information because when I went to the class, it wasn't just a data session. No, it was an event that really triggered something within me so that I can make these connections and I can better understand it. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we could not have a better example of this in the White House, right? I mean, Trump is authentic. People believe that he tells it like it is, right? That sense of authenticity gives him tremendous power and influence
Right.
to sway people, even when he's not telling the truth, because people believe that he is authentic. And so the only way to defeat that is going to be with authenticity, not with data. And so
Right.
that's also true of teaching, right? If you want to be a great teacher, you have to be seen as authentic.
Mm.
I mean,
Mm.
and I don't, again, I not to be political, but I don't think we're ever going to have a better way to see that authenticity has power.
Yeah.
Authenticity equals influence,
Yeah. And
and
this is
not data.
this is exactly what I think. And I use this term a lot where I think the biggest power that AI has brought to higher education is to hold up that mirror and to say, hey, look at you. I can do this. An AI can give all this information, but the issue of the human aspect is just that connection, that being able to create a safe environment in the classroom to be able to open up, to discuss things, to emotionally connect, all these things. So if you're an instructor that doesn't have those skills, doesn't have that capability to be authentic, to be emotionally present, to be caring, then those are the skills that you really need to work on and develop in order to be competitive in our new realities where AI is there. Yeah,
100%. And of course, we already know that AI is more persuasive than humans. We have we have a dozen good studies
right.
about this. And the reason is because, right, AI has this ability to convince you that it cares, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't feel emotion. And that of course is a great danger in AI, in that it can convince you that it cares. And
Right.
so, but the baseline has now been elevated. I talked earlier about raising standards. And so for
Yeah.
teachers, right, the AI is going to appear to be more caring and more patient because it'll listen to a student. I'll correct you for hours and hours and hours, right? AI is going to be more patient.
Yeah.
And so that is the new because I like that. I feel good when I work with the AI. The AI always values me, and right, AI is going to be really good at that stuff. That's why it's so persuasive.
Yeah.
And so that means that AI is going to be right. AI is better at debunking conspiracy theories than humans by a significant margin. But it also means that the bad AI, right? So we have to prepare students for that. But
Right.
it does mean that if you're just, the teacher who just spews content, you now can be, AI is now going to be a better teacher than you. And so that is going to put some people out of work, and it is going to raise the bar on the emotional connection side of what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that kind of ties in with the other question I had as far as recommendations to try and minimize academic misconduct, because that's always a big concern with people in academia. As far as I know, a lot that they want to focus just on the negative aspects, and students cheating is always a concern. And again, looking at the literature, it deals a lot with connection, right? If you don't care, then students won't care. If you're not enforcing rules, then students will go bypass the rules. So there's a lot to that. You have any specific thoughts on that as well?
Well, I mean, students cheat for a lot of reasons. Number one, they don't see the value in what you've assigned, right? If I
Mhm.
go to the gym and I do lift weights, I know what the value. I don't cheat because I went to the right. So, but we've taught students, K through 12 especially, but we have reinforced, Eddie, that the school is transactional, right? You give me
Right,
this paper in the
right.
way that I like, I give you this grade, you get to go to medical school. It's transactional, and so we have to be constantly talking about here is the value for you of doing this work.
Mm,
I think we should change our assignments where we need to, right? We often assign writing to be able to see thinking, and now we have a way to produce writing without thinking, which is a bad thing. And so our job is to reconnect writing and thinking. But our job is also to find other ways to measure thinking, right? Not
mhm.
just writing. And so there are other things that you can do. But so I don't like there are lots of it takes a long time to go through why detectors are problematic. But I think it's much better. I don't think we should call students that I think you cheated. I call students and I say, so, I'd really like to hear more of your voice.
Mm.
And I don't hear enough of your voice here. What could we do? Right. I think that's a much better conversation. I often say, do you want AI to be the hero or the sidekick? Right? Do you want to be the sidekick or the hero? You want to be the hero of your own story,
I
right?
like
You want to
that.
be the
I
hero.
like that.
And
Yeah,
so AI can be the sidekick, but you want to be the hero. And right now it feels like AI is the hero of this essay or this writing or whatever. And so I think that's a better discussion to have because it foregrounds why you're doing the work. Because
right.
you want to be the hero, or you want to be able to have something to say, or whatever the reason is. But the truth is, I think the better strategy than worrying about detection and cheating is to raise standards. I want you to be able to do something that AI can't do. And so there are lots and lots of assignments that clever people are coming up with. One of mine, reverse outlining, right? So bring your essay, have AI do an outline of your paper. Now, a reverse outline. What did you say in every paragraph? Give me a one sentence outline of each paragraph, right?
Mm.
Even if you cheated, right? The way AI works, it'll spit out something a little different. And then I say, so what would your enemy say of this essay? I ask here a couple of questions. Um, I'm a big fan of the AI policy that says, here are the prompts you can use for this assignment. Here are the only prompts you can use, right? Rather than you can't use AI, here are the only prompts. Uh, here are prompts I want you to use. But
Hmm.
then after you've written your essay, you've brought it in, you've done a reverse outline, you've asked some prompts. Now I say to students, how many of you think the essay could have been better? And every hand goes up. It's like, okay, so now this is when the real work starts. Make it better. Make it better than that AI essay that AI wrote for you last week, right? Now
Right.
your job is to make it better. And if some of that includes better prompting, okay. But it absolutely involves judgment of what is better. And that is a thinking skill that I want you to have. And so, I, yes, writing is important, but editing is also important, and thinking is really important. And so, I think we are going to have to stop worrying quite so much about cheating and think about, well, how do I get them to do actual thinking, which might involve a different assignment, which might involve other things. But just trying to say, aha, right? I don't want to be a police officer. That's not why I
Right.
got in.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that hits exactly right. That goes along with my thoughts as well, is that I really think that we all need to start to incorporate the use of AI in the writing process, but again, used in a thoughtful way at the appropriate time. Like if I'm learning to write, maybe not then, but later on, I also need to develop editing skills with the AI because that is more likely what's going to be asked of me when I graduate. When I go somewhere, they're going to want me to use the AI to be able to create reports faster. So the editing skills and working alongside with the AI is going to be extremely important. So I totally agree with what you're pushing there.
Yes,
Okay,
but notice that for
go ahead.
you as a teacher, when to introduce AI is important because it's
Yeah.
part of the learning process. Your boss won't care.
Right.
Your boss, if you produce a better essay faster, a better analysis faster, your boss doesn't care how you used AI. If the product is great. So we've got to stop talking just about products and make sure
Yeah.
we're also talking about process because
Yeah.
that's what we do.
Mhm.
How do I make it better? That's a question, right? Students want to, well, okay, I know I can use AI to make this better. How? I can teach you that. Now they're interested. Your boss isn't going to care. Your boss is going to say, figure it out, figure out a way to do this better and faster. And so, that involves, we have different reasons for caring about what they're doing.
Yeah, it's both the process and the product for sure. It's a combination. Okay, so final question, Ryan. Again, thank you for your time here. This question is a little bit stretching things because you've been working with business, you've been working with higher education, with different groups. What are your thoughts on the future? And the future, of course, is grandiose. 2030 is the limit, right? So that's 5 years from now, a little bit less than 5 years. What are your thoughts as far as how things are going to look for higher education, for business, for what students need to be able to do with AI? That even the 5 years, I think, is a huge amount of time. So if you want to limit that to a year or 2 years, I'm more than willing to give you that. But I'm really interested in your thoughts on the future.
Well, no, 5 years is good. I just got back from China where they have a national mandate to integrate AI at medical school by this fall. I mean, they're
Wow.
so they're moving ahead. So, I think there are lots of forks in the road, right? We could all end up working a 3-day work week, and life could be wonderful, and the robots could wash the dishes. On the other hand, it could be very bad. Um, so. I do think, though, that one thing we are going to see alternative credentialing with AI bots. So
Mhm.
there's already a nursing degree that's, $7,000. That's right. AI simulations, right? Work with real patients from the first day. Humans only intervene right? So if I can, you do it at your own pace. If I can do it in 6 months, I do it right.
Right.
Why does education have to take 4 years? It's because we measure butt time. We give the degree to the wrong part of the body, right? So if I could do all of that in 6 months, I should get a degree. And so AI will allow me to, right, work at my own pace. And somebody was going to offer cheap bachelor's degree with AI instructors. That will have for profit somebody else. And so how well will they do it? I don't know. But it will be cheaper. And so
Mm.
that will put pressure on us to say, well,
Yeah.
where, in the same way that the online, we now have, right, students like online. And so we now mostly all offer some online courses, even for students who live on campus. So the competition did. Um, so I think businesses are going to want AI skills, so we're going to have to incorporate AI skills. Universities that produce really smart, broadly liberal educated students who were able to adapt are going to do better, right? A computer science degree is out of date by the time you get it, right? If you can't apply what you learned about the iPhone 18 to the iPhone 20, your computer science degree does you no good. And so I think we're going to see degrees being very valuable, English, philosophy, the environment, that sort of thing. But I also think they're going to have AI skills. But I also think we're going to see massive competition, maybe not massive. We're going to see competition start. And so we're going to have to say, what is different about our experience that's worth, holy cow, $250,000 or whatever it is that we're charging by then. And so uh, I think we're going to have to respond in some way. There's no way to just say we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Right.
If you have retirement in less than 5 years, maybe you're okay. But if you're more than 5 years from retirement, and I also think ethically, you can't. I think, look, raising standards is a great opportunity for us. Let's raise standards and help students do better work with AI in the same way that I no longer grade spelling. The
Mm.
spell checker means, yeah, I know they can't spell. I can't spell. Right. But if you were a good speller, like my wife, you didn't notice the spell checker as an amazing technology. I was the
Right.
first person to adopt it because I'm a lousy speller, still a lousy speller. Right. So for me, it's transformative.
Right.
And so, faculty, we're good writers. We don't need AI, but there's already a study that the writing of like complaints against your bank. The use of AI is much higher in lower educated counties because those people are using AI more than we are. Because I don't need it. I don't like my bank. I can write that myself. Uh,
Hmm.
so I think we're going to see interesting things happen. People who didn't have an MBA can now put together a business plan and have Mark Cuban examine it on AI. And right. So that's going to produce different kinds of competition, which is going to force us to think, well, how do I need to change my program to deal with this person who's become an expert by using AI, and they're now competing against my students.
Mm.
So I think businesses, look, Harvard, the big, they're not going to have any problem. They offer prestige, but I think for most of the rest of us, what our students can do is going to be challenged in a way that it was a little bit with the internet and it was a little bit with video games. But I think now we're going to start to see more of that competition from people who have taught themselves thing with AI. In the same way that, my daughter learned things on YouTube and
Hmm.
didn't need to get a degree in some things because her boss said, "Oh, just look up a YouTube video. How do I write a press release? Oh, just watch a YouTube video. You didn't take a course in that? Figure it out." It's like,
Right.
okay, once she can do it, she doesn't need the course, right? She
Right.
learned how to do it. She gets experience. Boom. That back to that experiential learning, right? She wrote a couple, got some feedback, and now with AI, it's even faster. So I think um, we're going to have new forms of learning uh, and YouTube is a good one, right? Because if anybody here watching this on YouTube has ever thought, I don't have to call a plumber to fix my, I could find a YouTube video. Maybe I can fix this myself. Well,
Right.
what about the poor plumbers? You're going to put them out of work, right? Or
Right.
whatever it is, right? That's so we see it from, oh, I don't want to put teachers out of work, but that's because we're teachers, right? You don't worry
Right.
about not calling a plumber or someone to fix something. And so I think that's what people are going to say. They're not going to say, "Oh, I don't want to put the teachers out of work." They're going to say, "I can teach this myself."
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to that. So that's a good explanation of possibilities that could quickly come forward to us. So I see a lot of that happening already. So I think that's some good foreshadowing of things to come. So thank you very much for all of your time here. What would be the best way for people to continue to follow you, to see what you're doing? Is it LinkedIn? Is it what other social media are you really in?
Yep. So I'm on LinkedIn, Jose Antonio Bowen. I think I'm the only one. I have a website, teachingnaked.com, where under borrow, you can also find models, right? There are now 1,500 or no, probably 2,000 AI models now. You can't keep track. But I try to update this every other day so that you don't have to. It's for educators. It's listed by types. And so I do have a page that I try to keep current. But I also, I post a lot on LinkedIn. I follow a lot of people like Brent. In fact, I think LinkedIn, I learn, oh, there's a new this, there's a new report, there's a new article, somebody has written, I learn more on LinkedIn than I do any other in terms of staying current with what happened. Ethan Malik is a great person to
Yeah.
follow. But there are lots of people who are writing Substacks who are, Anna Mills, Mark Watkins. There are lots of people, but LinkedIn is the place you need to be at the moment. Um, and to follow a bunch of people who are talking about AI, because it's just the easiest way to stay current and realize, oh my gosh, here's a great idea for my teaching. There's
Yeah.
probably a group in your discipline, if you're a chemist or an English professor, I belong to a Google group. There are thousands of us that are sharing ideas about AI, but I know there are very specific ones for different disciplines. You're a microbiologist. Find the AI and microbiology group
Yeah.
someplace, and then people are sharing. I mean, the wonderful thing about our profession is that people share tools.
Yeah.
So, there is somebody out there who has already rewritten this class and come up with some new assignments that AI can't do, and so you should find them.
Nice. Okay. Well, so thank you very much. Also, all your books are available through Amazon, I take it, right?
Everything's on Amazon. Johns Hopkins Press, the Teaching with AI book is still there. Yep.
Great. Awesome. So thank you very much. I appreciate all of your time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye bye.
And remember, learning is for life.